Good afternoon and welcome to the Grand Prairie City Council meeting for Monday, September 9th, 2019. I'd ask everyone in attendance to rise and join us in singing O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
That was a rousing round of O Canada today. Thanks very much to the alumni of our very own Grand Prairie Boys Choir for the audio and to the National Film Board for the images of our country. We'll move into the adoption of previous council meeting minutes. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I move that the council adopt the minutes for the City Council meeting held Monday, August 26, 2019, as presented.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any errors or omissions that we need to change before we officially adopt those minutes? I don't see anybody ringing in with any, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries, and that'd take us to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda? Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move the council to adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Minhas. Any discussion or debate on the agenda? Again, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries as well. This brings us to the open delegation portion of our agenda. This is an opportunity for anyone in the community to come forward and address council on any community-related matter. As we look out into the sea of faces, I don't see anybody that's stirring. But we do have this opportunity at every regular city council meeting, and we've also instituted a second opportunity for those who wish to have a scheduled delegation to come in the evening. And we have no scheduled delegations this evening, and so that will shorten up our agenda a bit. But I would just remind the community that these two opportunities do exist. One, if you just wanted to walk in, you could do that. The other, you'd call ahead and let us know that you wish to present in the evening session of council. We'll close the delegation session portion of our agenda and move on to unfinished business. Item 6.1, Bylaw C 1260-109 is here for third and final reading. This is a carryover from our last meeting related to the rezoning of a number of properties on the north end of the Trader Ridge area. Can I get a motion for third reading, please, so we can open discussion and debate? Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move the council give the third reading to bylaw C 1260-109, beginning to amendment of the land use bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Minhas. That motion is open for discussion and debate on third and final reading. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Before we get into debate on this, it would be appropriate for me to ask a question to administration.
By all means.
Great. So a question for administration. I'm sure that there's similar properties to this elsewhere in Grande Prairie in terms of properties that are adjacent to farmland but are currently zoned commercial. If we accommodate all future requests like this in the future, if we approved all zoning of properties similar to this to go to urban reserve and start farming activities, do we have any idea of what the potential revenue impact that would have for the city?
I will look to Ms. Walker for that answer.
Thank you, Mayor Given. We have an estimated exposure of between $800,000 and $1.3 million for similar properties.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ms. Walker. Thanks, Councillor Bressie, and thanks for letting administration be prepared by providing them that question in advance. Go ahead.
And I think my question for council as we debate this is, I'm I'm pretty confident that if we pass this bylaw, we'll get similar requests in the future. I'd be very surprised if we didn't. And so my question for council is, what's the plan with those future requests if we pass this bylaw? Are we going to grant all of them, or are we going to grant some of them? If we're going to grant all of them, what's the idea for making up that revenue exposure that we just heard about? And if we're not going to grant all of them, what's unique about this property, or what is about this property that's making us say, yeah, we'll do this? And what kind of processes and policy are we going to set up so that we can have a predictable response to this in the future?
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. Any other discussion or debate or comment? Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I guess for me, I think it's nice to know the number, but it's completely hypothetical at this point. We're assuming that people might come in. I've drove most of the city after that and looked around at what I think could be lands that could be rezoned. I don't see a lot of applications coming forward personally. And I guess that's a risk I'd be willing to take and see if they do come forward what the plan is. But I can appreciate there's exposure there. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to come running in and try to create an opportunity for them to rezone their land. This land actually makes sense to rezone in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I still do believe that. There's a lot of other places that if they came in, I wouldn't believe that. So I guess it's still council's decision at that point of whether we want to try to rezone that or not. So I think it's hypothetical at this point, in my opinion.
Thanks, Councillor Palat. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Palat's comment as well. I think what is unique about this land is that the developer bought it with the intention of developing and has made progress on it and finds himself now at a position where he will continue to develop one portion of it and is asking for a stay, if you will, on the other portion. And that to me indicates continued intent to contribute positively to the city and to getting that built as quickly as possible, because he's not in it just to let his land sit in perpetuity. So that to me makes this a little different from the one that we heard about a year ago, and as well as future ones that may come before us.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I think that each and every case that comes forward will have its own tweaks, and we'll have to look at it individually. Can't make a decision today on what's going to possibly happen because we're not forward thinkers in the matter of knowing what the future brings. But if a case ever did come, we have to look at all the details and go from there. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. I recognize Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Thanks for your question, Councillor Bressie, and thank you to my council colleagues for, I guess, your responses in that. I kind of share a differing view of I guess, your responses. We know that as we do this land zone designation, that in a sense we are then setting a precedent. It was brought up lots at the last meeting that we had already set the precedent with a decision we had made earlier in our term on another set of land. With that set of land that we determined, I look at that as a unique parcel of land that, in my opinion, could just be called a one-off. There was lots of discussion that this may lead to precedent setting and a domino effect that could lead to more rezoning requests. And we've already seen one, and the delegation last week or last council meeting, they stated clearly that this is the precedent set. Now, when we start talking about case law and we start looking at case law, if we've done this more than once, the precedent is set, and then that can be used against us in all manners of appeals or requests that come forward to council. This is just going to keep it going. And I have to disagree with the sentiment that we're not future thinkers, because that's exactly why we were hired, is to help plan our land and help plan our city for decades, not for this year, not for next year. That's part of it, but we're supposed to have the foresight to understand the decisions that we make and the ramifications that they may have on our community, and that's our responsibility. I don't think it's far out in the realm of impossibility that if we approve this rezoning request today, even in a part, that we are going to face more requests such as these in the future, and thereby drastically affect our revenues and our administration's ability to do their work within the bounds of the MGA and within the budgets that we have set for them. So I have to respectfully disagree with some of my colleagues.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. I see Councillor O'Toole.
I may have misspoke when I said we are not future thinkers. I meant to say that we cannot portray the future as it is today. Things are going to change all the time. That first case lot that you're talking about, the reason he didn't want to go into that is because of all the underground structure there. So that's a determining factor there as well. So it's going to be completely different than this one. So it's not the same. And I think at that time, I think he had a fair reason that he couldn't do a darn thing with that piece of property, or very little. So that's my reasoning for that. So thank you.
Okay. So I see nobody else left in the queue. We're on third reading. Councillor Bressie, you had one last comment?
Yeah, my apologies. I had my mic active instead of my request to speak button pressed. As we're talking about this, and as my colleagues are considering your votes, I'd really encourage you, if this is a land use vote for you, if we're talking zoning, which is about land use, and if you think that agriculture use is the best use of this land, and that is the best type of activity that can happen on this parcel, great, vote yes for this bylaw. And if you can convince me from a land use perspective that this is a bylaw that is good for our community, great, I'm ready to vote yes. But I think most of the conversation about this has been about taxation and about a way to reduce taxes. And if that is why I support this bylaw, I would really encourage you to vote no. I think this flies in everything that is at the basis of a fair and equitable tax system. It's when the province talks about taxes and how taxes are supposed to be decided, they wrote this much legislation for us about taxes. And if that wasn't enough, the province went and wrote this much regulation about how taxes are supposed to be decided for individual properties. And I think a fundamental ideal of our tax system is it's supposed to be fair and equitable, which means that us as politicians, we set up the total tax levy that's gonna be taken, and then there's a regulated approach to figuring out who pays what within that tax system. I think that us as politicians, we're not supposed to get involved in what individual properties are supposed to be paying. There are ways in the Municipal Government Act for us to set up objective criteria that any property owner in a similar circumstances could use to get tax relief. And if we want to talk about those, I'd be fine with that. I think that's a great conversation for us to have. But when we're talking about the ideas of the intent behind this developer seems right, or when we're talking about ideas of we'll take future requests on a case-by-case basis, that's not how taxation is supposed to be decided. We are supposed to set up an objective system that everybody knows if you go into the system in this process, you'll get this result. And it's supposed to be a system that's objective enough that if you need to, you can argue it in front of a judge using concrete evidence. And right now, that's not what we're talking about at all, because land zoning is completely different than taxation rules. Land zoning is supposed to be a political process where we get to treat it on a case-by-case basis. Taxation isn't. And so I'd really encourage my colleagues, if this is about land use, awesome, support the bylaw, and please give me your arguments so I can support the bylaw with you. But if this is about taxes, let's please do it properly. Let's please not skirt the MGA's rules around taxes that I think we're going against potentially in spirit, if not in word. So please make the land use case to me if you're going to vote yes in favor of this.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I see Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'm 100% in agreement with Councillor Bressie. I'll just throw in a further to my 2 cents. I'm a believer that when we, as a collective body, when we are giving direction to our administration, we're looking for the best possible outcomes for our entire community. And although we have the power to maneuver within the gray areas of the MGA, or maybe even within our own land use bylaw, or situation by situation, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right thing to do, especially moving forward. And I can appreciate members of council and their desire to find a happy medium for our developers and our last meeting's delegation. And and the certain fears that the land will devalue, and that's perhaps not unfounded. But I'm a believer that this land will develop, it will sell, and it just means a matter of time. We're giving a special consideration to a developer, whereas we wouldn't give the same consideration to somebody who just lost their job and couldn't pay their property taxes on their residential property. But it's the residential properties that are going to bear the more of this tax, and it's our administration that's going to have to work within the confines of having close to $150,000 revenue shortfall for the year. This is also counter to Council's direction at our 4-year budget and in our strategic plan. Our direction was to reduce taxes, which we have done, and to improve revenues. And it seems like if we make this decision today to forgive the taxes, rezone the land, because we feel it's the best thing to do, we are thereby impacting our revenues to the negative. And I think that's only going to snowball as time goes forward. So I don't want to be speculative. I want to deal with logic and rationale, and I believe that the hypotheticals are very logical to outcomes that we will receive more requests such as this, and we will thereby reduce our revenues in the future. And we wouldn't do this for a typical homeowner, and it's the typical homeowner here in the city that's going to have to bear the brunt of this. So with that, I urge Council, please see the reason in supporting administration's requests. They don't make requests, recommendations to the negative that aren't usually well reasoned and working in the best interests of the city and our organization. And so for that, I hope you'll support administration's request and go back on this amendment and the request of our delegation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. I see Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I can really appreciate the conversation, and we had this 2 weeks ago, and we're going to continue to have it looks like now. But the developer also was very clear on there's not a market for this land, and so when you want to talk about what the highest and best use of land, at sometimes what land use planning is, if there was a market for this like they thought there was in 2014 when they started this process, they probably wouldn't be in this spot. And I think it's also our duty as council to realize there is market changes, and sometimes moving land pieces back to UR or from UR to CA is what is market driven. This is partly market driven, you guys. The market has not been good for this land. And as like I said last time, if we force a developer to keep doing this outside of his land use planning that he doesn't want to do in this context and this amount of raw land that's zoned as CA right now, we could really watch land values drop. And that's something that I think we better be very cognizant in this room. We will watch land values drop if this developer, and it's happened in Calgary, I've seen it happen there, a developer got frustrated and just dumped his land to get off title. That could happen in this case. If we force this gentleman to say, you know what, we disagree, we think the best use is leaving it as CA because we are going to force you to do that, even though there's no market for it. Yes, it's partly about taxes, but it's partly about what's the best use of this land. It's not good use as CA right now. It's not going to sell anytime soon. And so if we're going to force a developer to hold this land and pay the high taxes on it, then we have to be able to be okay with if he decides to just drop the value on this land and clear it off his books. And then what negative impact could that have on all the other raw industrial land in Grande Prairie? It'll probably be higher than 800,000 to $1 million. And so, let's run the math on every side when we're looking at this and be very careful about the decision you're going to make. I can appreciate we're worried about loss of revenue here. I would look at it more as maybe we should be grateful for the revenue we've got on this. This gentleman did pay $300,000 in penalties last year, which this alone is going to be less than that. The loss we're going to receive on this land is less than the penalties he's already paid on it. There's 4 CR units going on this site. There's $2.4 million of improvements that was put into the community by this developer that were needed for the community. So I know it's a very complex issue, but in this case, this land isn't the best use of CA in the economy that we're in right now. Unless something dramatically changes, we've got an abundance of CA land sitting around Grande Prairie, and forcing somebody to leave it as CA when he has no appetite to want it as CA is not good use for land planning, in my opinion.
Thanks, Councillor Palat. Councillor Minhas. And before I turn on Councillor Minhas's microphone, I'll just say we have had a couple of rounds. I want to make sure that everybody does have a chance to speak if they want to speak on the issue, but we won't go multiple rounds. Councillor Minhas hasn't had a chance to speak, and I would just also acknowledge that Councillor Clayton wasn't here for the public hearing or first and second reading, so she won't be voting on this issue. Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Wilgiven. I think I heard the both sides, the comments, but I 100% agree with the way what he said. This was the unique situation when they developed the land. This is where I think our administration should learn to, and us, not to, when the developer comes, not to do that much area in one phase. It should be 2 or 3 or 4 phases, because the economy was good. They thought it's going to be developed. So I would say we should support this one. It's not necessarily we're going to do next. It'll be different situation. In the past, we done for that made the farmland that was we already set the president the reason for it, but this is particularly in needed that we need to help them. $150,000 tax revenue we're going to lose, but we have gained, like, I won't say much. Wade already covered that whole thing. So I would ask council to support this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. I see Councillor Clayton, and then we'll get to Councillor Bressy's probably the last opportunity to speak to this. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Although it's been said I won't be voting, I would really encourage those of you who are able to vote to support this. Although urban reserve is primarily used for agricultural, I think that the move from CA to UR and CG to CR to UR are extremely important in the perception across the province and the development community of what it means for us to be an open for business community. There's many mid-sized province or cities across the province and some in northern BC that are our competitors on a regular basis. If we want to have the perception that we're not willing to be flexible and nimble when it comes to development, that perception will far outweigh any potential hypothetical loss of revenue. So I really encourage you to think about the long-term implications this has across the province. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Bressy.
I agree with what you guys are saying in terms of the intent of supporting this developer and in terms of the idea of we want to be business friendly. I 100% agree with your intent, but this is so the wrong tool to do it. We are so flouting, I think, what the intent of taxation and land zoning rules are in the MGA by doing this. And conveniently enough, recently the province actually introduced a proper process we can use to provide tax incentives and to help developers like this in an equitable, fair way that isn't us overstepping and using land zoning in a way it's not supposed to be used. So, Councillor Clayton, you talk about how you want to lead the province and you want to be nimble. Well, then maybe we become one of the first jurisdictions that figures out how to use new legislative tools to accomplish what you're trying to do. If you guys want to have that conversation, I'm so open to supporting that conversation. I'm so open to working with you guys on figuring out how to do that. But let's do this through the proper tax planning tools that the MGA has provided to us. Let's not skirt the rules, and let's not set up something that potentially doesn't treat the next person applying for this in the exact same way that this person is being treated. That just, politicians should not be deciding how individual properties get taxed. We should be setting up the rules they all play by, and I am so open to looking at how we change those rules to make us more business friendly. I'm so open to that conversation, but I implore us not to do it in this way. Let's do it in the proper way if we're going to do it.
Thanks, Councillor Bressy. I'll just enter to say my recollection from the staff report is that we are actually all being a little bit speculative in terms of the property tax implications. If I remember correctly, the administrative staff report did say that there is no guarantee that the property tax bill will change as a result of this or change to any specific number as a result of this. To be clear, council is today dealing with a land use zoning issue. I think the developer has a belief that it will have an impact on property taxes, and that may be the case, but what council is dealing with here is a land use zoning issue. We are completely speculating about what that property tax impact will be because property taxes and assessment of that land will happen through the regular processes after council has decided whether the zoning for that land is correct or not. And so, on that basis and a recognition that in many other developments, this land wouldn't have been zoned CA at this stage. It would have continued to be UR. And that discussion about highest and best use, I'm comfortable on a land use planning issue to say that, yes, this makes sense for this to to return to a UR status, urban reserve status, and the owner of that land will be responsible for the property taxes on them however they come out after that decision. I'm not going to make any speculation on exactly what that will be. We all have been guilty of doing that. I think that's correct. We've been looking at this from a tax basis. Council's decision today is on zoning, and that's the basis that I will be supporting third and final reading. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Are you ready, Council, then to move to a vote on third and final reading? Okay, I'll call for the vote, and again, I just note that Councillor Clayton won't be voting. She won't be recording a vote on this one. Please vote. 7, thank you. And that motion carries. And that handles our unfinished business. We have no reports this evening, and so that'll take us to item 8.1, the Infrastructure and Protective Services Committee meeting. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I would move that Council adopt the minutes of the Infrastructure and Protective Services Committee meeting held on September 3rd as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, please vote to adopt them or against adopting them. Either way, you have options. That motion carries. Councillor Clayton, anything you wanted to highlight from that set of minutes?
Sure, just a couple high-level comments in regards to transportation. As people are aware, construction season continues across the city. There are some projects that have started to wrap up, as you'll notice, as well a few projects that are still underway, which is great to, for the fortunate that we are still having a little bit mild temperature. We're getting a bit more work done, which is nice. As well, I didn't hear the numbers, but last week was the first day of school, and I know that there's still an emphasis on reminding people of driving appropriate speed in the school zones. So I just encourage everybody to keep their heads up and their eyes open, and as you go through school zones with lots of youth on the streets. So thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. So that'll take us to item 8.2, the Corporate Services Committee meeting. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Gibbon. I move that Council approve the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019, as presented.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
Once again, we'll do the Director Services Area Update. This is something that we've implemented here this last term, and we get a on-the-spot review of what we've done in the last 2 weeks, thanks to our Director. The assessment and taxation September penalty will be levied today, which was last week, and there's approximately 4,200 inspections that were done over the last 4 months. Corporate facility management, replacement for the flow rider and front and rear recovery area components has been completed at the Eastlink Center, and the outdoor pool was open to the public August 24th, and the 1-year warranty review has been completed on the CKC grandstands with any identified construction deficiencies to be corrected in the next coming weeks. Under the Finance, administration is focused on the budget preparations for the 2020 and 2023 period, and Human Resources administration is wrapping up the QP agreement, and Information Technology Service is the Evergreening is a program, I guess, is now 90% complete, and the business licensing project is postponed as the vendor is dealing with security breach. We don't want that. And the print services project is ongoing. Again, procurement administration has completed demos for the e-procurement software, including the County of Grande Prairie. The award is in progress. The RFP evaluation was facilitated with the towns of Sexsmith and Wembley for regional economic development strategy. And a couple more items. We had talked about property tax incentives, bylaw and policy review committee, and we'll talk a few about the next couple bylaw committees that we would like to talk about here. So I'll leave it at there. And with that, I move the council approve the terms of reference for the bylaw and policy review committee.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on that motion? I know Councillor Bressie had provided council members ahead of time with a proposed amendment. Councillor Bressie, would you like to make that amendment?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. So I've got a motion I'm going to make, and I left it at your desks as you came in so you could see it, not just listen to it. And Councillor Clayton's got a much better way with words than I have. So I'm going to make a slightly different motion than you got in front of you. It's still got the same intent, but it sounds a lot better. And so what my motion is I'd move that council strike, enhance the city of Grande Prairie as a business-friendly community, and replace with make Grande Prairie more business-friendly, enhance the community for residents, and improve city processes. And kind of the intent of this is, as I was going home and thinking about these terms of reference, I like where they're going. I really think that a priority should be reducing red tape, as our provincial government's doing, and making this better for business. But I also think that business can't be the only focus of this committee. I also think we need to remember that we've got a community of residents that we're responsible to, and also that one of the ways we're going to become more business friendly is by becoming more efficient and more customer oriented with our policies and procedures. So I think it's really important to recognize both the city as its own corporation and also our residents as we're reviewing these bylaws and policies and procedures. So I hope the council will support this amendment.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Bressie. So council, you've all had provided in advance the amendment, and with that slight wording, I appreciate the collaboration among council members to make it sound great. Any discussion or debate on the amendment, Councillor Bressie's amendment? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'll be supporting this amendment. When it came across our email not too long ago, I thought it was thoughtful and considerate and clear approach to the wording and the terms of reference, and it actually is more of a holistic approach that actually responds to the best parts of our community and not just one part over another. So I appreciate Councillor Bressie's amendment and Councillor Clayton's, help with some of the wording, and I'll be voting in favor of this.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any other discussion or debate on the amendment? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote on Councillor Bressie's amendment. Please vote. Okay. That motion carries, and so we can have discussion and debate on the main motion as amended. Any discussion or debate on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole, you already did the Director's Service update.
Yeah, you know, when we have a good committee, we don't have to have a lot of discussion here, but it was nice to be able to bring up and have some stuff discussed. But thank you all for supporting that motion.
Great. Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. We'll move on to item 8.3, the Community Living Committee. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that Council approve the minutes of the Community Living Committee meeting held Tuesday, September 3rd. Yeah, period.
As presented. Sure, fair enough. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Again, seeing none, I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Thiessen, anything to highlight from that meeting?
Yeah, a couple things. My apologies. My sentence seemed to want to end before it was over. So anyways, we had a delegation from the Prairie Art Gallery. Jeff Urbeck, the Executive Director, and Pam Balderston, the Board Chair, presented to committee and overviewed their successes in 2018. Some of their programs neared 250,000 people in attendance, which is up about $80,000 from the year previous. And some of their highlights included the 4 Indigenous exhibitions, Walking with Their Sisters, a continued relationship with the elders, and their first major international exhibition as well in the Ichiku Kubota's Amazing Kimonos. And I know Councillor Blackburn was talking about that quite a bit, and many of us had the opportunity to go take a look at those fancy smocks, and it was really good, but excellent presentation and showing how the Prairie Art Gallery is a driver for economic success and, encouraging people to come to our community and set up their professions here as well. So it was definitely a great presentation. Just from our Director's Service Area update, one thing of meaning to talk about is our transit. And I know we had a lot of discussion about this over the summertime, but the orientation sessions for DTS staff are completed and administration has begun to review the operations. To date, the service changes that took place on August 19th have had negligible impact on ridership and very few customer complaints. So hopefully we're on a path to success there, and I look forward to future updates as to DTS operations in our transit system in the days to come. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. I guess that handles all of our committee business. We have no items of correspondence. We have no delegation business. We do have a notice of motion this afternoon. Item 11.1 with respect to election signs. Councillor Bressie has provided that ahead of time. So this is Council's notice that we will get an opportunity to speak about this at our next council meeting, and it will be up for discussion and debate at that time. Then from there, I guess we're into council member reports. And Councillor Friesen, you had Disabled Transportation Society.
There we go. I'm challenged with my buttons today. Yes, I did. Sorry, I was just looking for something. So DTS is meeting tomorrow at the Elks Hall, and I was looking for the time. Do you know offhand, Mayor Gibbon? You can look for that on the Volunteer Services Bureau website. They are hosting it on behalf of DTS, and the topic is how to move forward with the society now that the city has assumed operations of disabled. It's at 7. I'm getting so 7 p.m. tomorrow at the Elks Hall if you'd like to give input on how the society might move forward. And I believe there will be a couple of city representatives there as well to answer any questions if there are concerns or questions yet regarding the assumption of operations by the city of GP.
Great. Thanks very much, Councillor Friesen, for that update. Councillor Plott, you had something from the Downtown Association.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Gibbon. We had our Downtown Association board meeting last month, and just a couple things to highlight from it. We will be seeing probably shortly a letter coming to Mayor Gibbon regarding Bill 7 and maybe potentially some incentives we could look at doing for new builds downtown. There was an update on the homeless daytime shelter that a MOU had been received, and that looks like some funds have been committed. So I'm looking forward to a report from administration and hearing the next steps on that. I think we're all excited to hear about what that could become. There was a little discussion. We're aware that the city's launched the Art in the Alley project, and there's now 4 businesses that have signed up for that. So the momentum is starting to take shape, which is nice to see. A couple comments just from the committee, I guess, on the ongoing landscaping and some of the repairs and maintenance. There's a little bit of frustration about the timeliness of some of those things that are happening in phases that have been completed, that the weeding and stuff hasn't been happening as timely as I wanted, or as the downtown would like to see happen. So I wanted to express that. And then on a little bit of a negative note, not that wasn't, I guess, a little bit, but it was a little bit disheartening to hear it wasn't a big turnout for downtown during the folk festival. It wasn't. I was a little bit disappointed about the kickoff and some stuff. So I think Downtown Association is looking forward to meeting with them and just having a closeout meeting and saying, hey, here's some things we could maybe approve on. It's kind of ongoing when the festival's not that old of a festival, so it's kind of a work in progress. So. But very good thoughts on it. It was negative in context, but a lot of positive thoughts of how they could work with Folk Fest to make the event a more success for next year. And a shout out to Wendy Bosch a little bit. She's been doing a great job since filling Helen's shoes, which were not easy to fill, and she was a big driver on working on this homeless shelter, and she's been very, very proactive and very involved. So I want to give a shout out to her as well.
Thanks very much, Councillor Plott. I think that handles all of our reports from the external agencies, boards, and commissions. I don't see anybody waving their hand madly that we missed one. So we'll go to Councillor Bressie for Councilmember Roundtable. Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. 2 things I'll highlight is, one, I was excited to attend along with Councillors Plott and Minhas, mixer that the Chamber hosted for medical residents and students that are in town. They're doing rural rotations, or they're doing the residency here, and it was an opportunity to tell them a little bit about our town, hear the things that they want to see in a community, and highlight how they can access those here in Grande Prairie, in hopes of getting some of them to establish their careers here. So I really appreciate the Chamber organizing that, and that was the first time I got to take part, so that was a good event for me. The other thing I'll highlight is the province last week had a webinar for a proposed new police funding model. And I noticed that Mayor Given in the chat bubbles was on there asking questions alongside me. And I think I want to highlight to council, I think it's important that we pay attention to this. I think that our residents already bear a disproportionate amount of the costs of police in our province. I think with the RCMP unionizing and costs likely to go up, maybe significantly, we need to do what we can to make sure our residents don't also bear a disproportionate amount of those increases. And so I think as the province is talking about a more equitable way to cost police, I think it's important we're paying attention and that we're engaged in that.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bressie. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I had a pretty exciting couple of weeks. On the end of August, I went to the Men's Fast Pitch Championships, and I spoke on behalf of council and the mayor at the medal awarding on Sunday. It's amazing that 9 players from the national team were here playing. Some were on different teams, obviously, but when I was all completed with the ceremony, I went over, talked to the organizing committee from National Fast Pitch, And they say that we need to step it up a little bit because we are that facility that everybody wants. And that's a pretty warm, fuzzy feeling to have it in Grande Prairie. I know we put a lot of money into Muskosipi Park, put a lot of money into the ball diamonds, and they said that in another year or two, we'll be looking at the National Native Fastball Championships, and they would like us to bid on that. And also, they said that the Worlds are coming up, and that's been a goal for all of the fast pitch to have it here in Grande Prairie. So I would really recognize the fact that the organizing committee for all of Canada wants us to host that, if we can do that. So we don't know what the process is going to be. We have to be asked, and they have to be all that kind of stuff taken care of. But they were amazed at the quality of people that showed up to watch. These are all old players. There was, I think, was well over 4,000 people, well more than they anticipated to be here to watch and view. And the winning team, the winning team was from Newfoundland, and the second place or silver medal come from Vancouver Island. So from different parts of Canada, far end reach, they got to meet in Alberta to play their winning game. So just wanted to make sure that was spoken of. And you could call it an event where a number of councillors went to. We had Eunice Friesen and Chris Thiessen and myself went to the Parkinson Step and Stride. We also attended the Odyssey House evening and the National Firefighters Memorial Day ceremony, which was held the second Sunday every year now of September. Recognized also 911, but it's more intended to focus on the loss of firefighters either during work or after they've completed their work and retired and died from diseases. So just wanted to let you know that we were well attended there today, or the other day.
Thanks very much, Councillor Toole. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Not a lot to report. However, I do want to make mention of a congratulations to Tennille Towns. Last night was awarded 4 Canadian Country Music Awards, Single of the Year, Songwriter of the Year, Best Video of the Year, and Female Artist of the Year. So those of you who haven't met her, besides her incredible musical talents, she is, through her events, raised over $1.5 million for Sunrise House and the youth shelter. She's truly somebody that we need to be proud of. So big congratulations to her.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Minhas.
There's not much to say. I went to a couple of events, but the very good comments and congratulations to the city for our open outside pool, and plus that little park. I don't know what they call that, but there are lots of kids and parents, their mother have been liking it. I was walking through a couple of times there, different times, and everybody doing appreciating that thing is opened up both at the same time this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. I'd like to point out, as I was the only councillor there, the Grande Prairie Live Theatre AGM was yesterday afternoon. And it's always good to hear about our theatre because it's one of the few in Canada that is able to continue to operate and have a fairly stable revenue. And that bears true again this year, and even with the addition of the John Paul II School Theatre, the GPLT has taken the management of that on board, and it's had the impact that they expected on their revenue, which is not a negative one. So that was exciting to see. It's going smoothly and well, and is a positive thing for both theatres. And a shout out to the community members who received awards at that AGM yesterday. We saw a Rising Star Award, which is for a young person in theater, awarded to Tabin Olivier, who is a grade 9 student and has taken on a number of roles and has gotten very excited about theater lately. We had the Short But Sweet Award given to 2 different individuals, Deneen Meek and Amy Johnson, who are a couple of folks who haven't been with GPLT very long, but have already made a significant impact and given a lot of volunteer hours to that organization. And finally, so well deserved, this is a particularly touching year when the Jenny Tetro Award for Long-Term Service was awarded because she did pass away this year. And it was given so deservedly to Norman and Margaret Dick. And if any of you have ever been to a GPLT production, you probably have seen results of their hard work in the appearance of the production, from set to painting to props to costuming and hair and makeup. They are a couple that really carry on Jenny's long service excellence. So thank you to Wayne Ailing and the board over at the GPLT.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor Platt.
Thanks. I think most of the events I attended have been mentioned already, but I will just point out one that Councillors Friesen and Thiessen were at as well. And we had got together to a retirement party for Miss Susan Bale at the fire hall. And over 30 years of experience, I didn't know her personally, but just being in the crowd for that one, you could tell she was a character and was well respected with her peers. And it's just nice to see somebody that's put in that sort of time and dedication. Some of the stories she told about being on dispatch, I can't imagine. And she's had some tears, I'm sure, in her life, but very well respected. And it was a fun event, and was proud to be part of it.
Thanks very much, Councillor Platt. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll mention first off an event that I was the only council member at, but I always say when one of us is there, we're all there, collective eyes in one spirit, I guess. But it was the 3rd annual overdose awareness event down at Muskosipi Park, which is growing every year, actually, in attendance. In fact, even the walk is growing, according to all the participants, because they've gone in a couple extra blocks than they have in the past. It was great to see members of Rotary out there cooking free barbecue for everybody, and the presentations were real and came from the people who are engaged or were engaged at one point in a lifestyle that put them at risk of overdose. So the more awareness that we can raise for all people in our community, I think our community is going to be better served by it, because we're helping people up, not helping people out, and awareness is definitely helping people up and helping people out. Also, I was very proud to be a member of council. I'm going to just throw in Councillor Bressie was also at the FASD meeting or day on this past Friday, as well as the National Firefighters Day. So it was great to be on mass and on force with council for several of those events I got to speak at. It's always great to be able to call Kevin O'Toole the teddy bear of City Council, and I got to do it 3 times this weekend. So it was all good, and I didn't get punched. I got hugged for it, so that's why he's a teddy bear at council. But I wanted to make a special mention on the National Firefighters Day. As we know, we're 2 days now away from 9/11, and there was a moment because when an organization such as our firefighters puts together an event for themselves, it's just an honor to be there and to be invited to be there. It did come at short notice. The speeches were heartfelt. The prayer was written and then spoken from the heart, and it was quite moving to be a part of that. But I left with a feeling of regret, and I spoke a little bit with the mayor about it yesterday, because near the end of the event, they asked us council members, well, not directly, but they said, does anybody else want to speak? And typically, I think of us all, we're all ready to jump up and speak, but I think when you're in somebody else's house, in their barn, you're not quite sure how. And I left with my own regrets, because I wanted to thank the firefighters, and I thought, when that fire bell rings, they don't hesitate to answer the call. And even though we weren't specifically asked, I think just even the mention of if anybody else wants to speak, that as a member of council and representatives of our community, I think I could have at least jumped up and said thank you for your bravery, for your courage, for your heroism, putting yourself in the line of fire and in jeopardy every time that bell rings. So to the firefighters, thank you for all the service that you do for our community. And the next time the bell rings, no matter how quiet, I know we will answer the call and give you your due praise. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. I'll just be brief and report on a couple items that I don't think there were any other council members at. On the 29th, I had an opportunity to welcome the Minister of Service Alberta, Minister Nate Glubish, to City Hall. He was in town in the area, I should say, for a couple of consultations, one on rural broadband and one on registry services. And so I really appreciated the fact that when he was in our community, he made the opportunity to come by. It was a short visit, about 20 minutes, but great to hear about his work across the province. On the 30th, I had an opportunity to go for lunch with a local that we all know and love, Shauna Miller. Council probably is aware that she is the president of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, and so it was an opportunity for us to discuss how the city might work closer with the business community and through the Alberta Chamber of Commerce on some issues of mutual interest. And then on the 5th, I attended on behalf of the city at the Seven Generations Energy Golf Tournament. Council is no doubt aware about the Seven Gens Golf Tournament. In its time to this year, and this doesn't include the most current numbers, but they've made and kept commitments of $2 million to the Regional Hospital Foundation and $1 million to Grande Prairie Regional College. And so really a big thanks to Seven Generations Energy for all the work that they put into organizing that event, and a further thanks to all of our oil and gas related service industry, who are the ones who really power the fundraising of that event. I have no doubt that 7Gen twists a few arms and encourages a few people that they should come and sponsor the event. But when you go down the entrance to the Grande Prairie Golf and Country Club, the list of gold sponsors and silver sponsors and whole sponsors, it really is just a who's who of the service companies and organizations that we all know support our community in so many different ways. And it's great to see them coming together to support our community in yet another way. On the 6th, I was up bright and early to record an interview with CBC AM radio program regarding our temporary transition site and the work that the city is trying to do to manage that challenge that we have in our community with the limited tools and resources that we have available as a municipality. I was happy to share that message with that provincial audience. And with that, I think everything I wanted to report on has been covered, and so we'll call our meeting adjourned. Thank you.